Thanks for joining me for another devotion. We're in Revelation 6 already, and we're starting at the start of the chapter. And today I've been reading verse 1 onwards, and it says, I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come!" And I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. So we can see four horses and riders being released when the first four seals are being opened, and we can see that different horses and riders represent different things. So the first one is a white horse, which stands for conquest. And then verse 3, it says, when the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come!" And then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. So this one represents war. Verse 5, when the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come!" And I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. So this talks about famine. Then verse 7, it says, when the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come!" And I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. And this horse represents death. Now what we can see here is that four horses are being released with the first four seals being opened, and they mean trouble. I mean, it's just clear. These are all the things that come against the people of God in this earth. And I don't know about you, but these things are not necessarily my daily reality. Conquest and war, these things are not in our everyday experience. Famine, death, I think they're not my everyday experience. And yet we live in a world that is full of these things. There are many parts of the world where these are much more of a reality. So for Christians in the West, sometimes it's a little bit harder to understand these verses, particularly for the first audience who were reading this. This was everyday reality. The uncertainty of life was so great that they had to really learn how to live close to Jesus and to God and stand firm in their faith. This is obviously why the book of Revelation was written. So for us today, trying to translate it as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, what sort of struggles am I facing today? There are all sorts of things that will come to mind, and I think sometimes it's just workload that might come, perhaps worries about children, or challenging things that I need to work through with people. And I can sometimes get quite consumed by these things, and I can start to fall into a danger of two camps when we face difficult things. Perhaps you're going through some difficult things at work or health-wise or family-wise. Sometimes we can fall in the danger of making them too big in our minds, and therefore we become all consumed by these problems. And sometimes we can ignore them altogether, and we can be surprised that we have struggles. Now, Jesus prepared us for troubles. He said in John 16, verse 33, he says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So Jesus is telling us that we should not be surprised when trouble comes our way. It doesn't always mean that we've strayed from God's path. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting it wrong. Trouble and struggles are just a reality of this broken world. At the same time, he tells us these things so that we will not be surprised, but take heart, because he has overcome the world. And we need to remind ourselves when we go through trouble that these things are not outside of his control, that we can learn how to trust him right in the midst of it, and that he is with us. So what I have learned from this today is thinking about the day ahead and the things that are currently happening, some of the challenges I'm facing, thinking, okay, these things are not outside of God's control. It's not a surprise that these things are happening. I'm going to surrender myself in the midst of this and ask God to lead me through this and to stay close to Him today. So perhaps you can take an opportunity today to work it through with God. What are some struggles that you are facing? Are you perhaps neglecting them, or are you surprised by them? How can you learn how to be standing firm in the midst of it and draw close to Jesus?